putting in this, so that could really be software under Article 9. So maybe some should talk right now about this, but that should be a good act. Yeah. Okay. This is the difficult situation. Hacking is not really the difficulty if the national law, the national legislation respect the possibility to restrict it. In a way, if they don't, you are facing a problem. There is another thing, EU framework decision. This is a little bit more tricky because unlike, there is another question with the subject.
I read something similar, and I'm unsure if it has been mixed up or if it is this convention, but a proposal to do the same thing in where you would be prosecutable across nation borders on copyright. And I think the controversial part there was basically if you put something copyrighted up on the net, you will be prosecuted. Like the juridical person or the corporation could take you and file you for violation of copyright in Bahamas or wherever it suited the corporation. And I think this was connected to this convention from what I've heard, what I've read, but you know, I don't know.
No, I'm not quite sure, no.
Right.
At least I didn't read it.
Right. No, it was a book by Dreyhus, I think, the author was called, but no. All right, I will check that then.
All right then. There's this framework decision, 2005. It's just come up. I don't know if you realize that. It's a little bit more tricky because the EU can force the countries to implement it, and they will force them to implement it until 2007. So there could be that the Cybercrime Convention is not implemented in 2007, but this framework decision will be implemented. It's not as far as broad as the Cybercrime Convention because it has only provisions with regard to substantive criminal law, no criminal procedure law, no international harmonization with regard to investigations. So it's only procedural law. And therefore, it will be implemented until the beginning of 2007, that's definitely sure. Article 2, same article, dealing with hacking as well. Each member state shall take the necessary measures to ensure that the intentional access without right to the whole or any part of an information system is punishable as a criminal offense, at least for cases which are not minor. So this is a very, it's a very similar offense if you compare it to the Cybercrime Convention, and it looks like a complete ban on hacking as well. There is a question in the back.
Just a comment. As far as I know, there's I actually read it, a communication from the European Commission because of the court ruling of the European Court of Justice. So the whole European criminal law framework is invalidated by this new court ruling and has to be reintroduced into Parliament as a directive under different procedural rules. And this also applies to the so-called second IPR enforcement directive. This framework decision will be pushed through in the next year through Parliament, but it's not law yet.
I followed this discussion, but only with regard to the copyright aspect. As far as I know, this one was not concerned, but I'm not quite sure. If it is, I just didn't get the information.
It was mentioned in the annex of the document, among other criminal law procedures, and actually the whole European criminal law framework is a real mess, and there's a lot of resistance from member states, especially as criminal law in the European Union is not really harmonized because law is so different, especially in the United Kingdom. They have more a kind of case law tradition and don't like to implement criminal law. And this whole criminal law framework came up, I think, in 2001 or 2002 with the protection against illegal copying of currencies of the euro. And then they tried to get into other areas of criminal law, but well, actually, you can do something. You can stop this provision or change it because it will be reintroduced in the next year.
Yeah, but I mean, we saw the European Parliament with regard to data retention, and that did not really solve the problem. I mean, that was they could have stopped it, but they didn't do it. So I'm not too optimistic that they will stop it. But thank you very much for the comment. You're very much right, because criminal law was basically not under was not something the EU was dealing with. It was always member states, and they took out some of these things. For example, with regard to cybercrime, they have the possibility for legislation in this area, but we will see whether the European Parliament will change something. Right now, there is an Article 2, a provision that could mean a complete ban on hacking. There is one exception because it is limited, or can be limited, no minor cases. So if you're really just hacking into a small web page and not the FBI web page and not my web page, no, if it is just a small one, then there will be no criminal liability for that. But it has an amendment as well. You can restrict that, but not as far as you could under the Cybercrime Convention. So each member state may decide that the conduct referred to paragraph 1 is incriminated only when the offense is committed by infringing security measures. That means only protected sites are protected by the criminal law. So, well, the difficulty is if it is not protected, how can that be hacking? I mean, you know, if there is a web page, an open web page I'm accessing, it can't be a criminal act. So I think there will be the need to implement something like this. Without this, it is a very, very wide criminalization. Well, that's there is another question, but that would be it from me right now. Oh, sorry. That would be it from me right now, but there is another question. Yes, please.
Just a moment. Okay. I see a big problem with using wireless networks as well in this article, because when you use a wireless network, you don't know if you're allowed to use it or not. You cannot ask the owner.
But this is the fact. I mean, we were talking about misuse of wireless networks, and somebody said, well, I'm not hacking into them, I'm just driving through the street and my computer simply logging on. This wouldn't be a criminal act, but you're absolutely right. If they do not restrict the provision, that could really be difficult by someone just saying, no one should use my open network, and you're simply driving through the street and accessing it. So I think this would really be a very, very difficult situation if the prosecution would be allowed to prosecute you driving through the street and logging into it. So I think war driving in general is not a crime yet, and that is the conclusion we do have in Germany. So there were some investigations going on. I mean, if you have these huge antenna, if you have them on your car, police stopped these guys and said, come on, you're just committing a crime. Well, in general, it's not. So if you're driving through the street and just checking, are there open networks or not, this is not a criminal act. The question is only, will they believe that you were just driving around or doing something else, maybe hiding your identity? Well, if you have any remarks, if you have any questions, or if there is anything that you realize in the real world that might be a problem and should be discussed, just send me an email, and I will try to answer as well. And if you would like to have this presentation as a PDF document, just send me an email as well, and I will send it to you. Okay, yeah, that's, if there is no, oh yeah, there is another question. Yes, please.
I just wanted to comment on the analogy with the real world. Maybe the fact that simply unlocking a door is not forbidden is that's because nobody does it. I think, obviously, it's if, but if people would start doing it on a wide scale, it would get outlawed because it annoys the owner to no end. And society would tell the lock pickers, go pick your own locks.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the situation could change if all of you run out in the streets now and unlock doors. That's for sure. And it's I think it is the same situation with hacking. I mean, I don't know how many of you simply hack a page, get into it, and then they say, that's it, that was fine, that was all I wanted to do. I think this is more or less a theoretical problem, but if we discuss it on a legal basis, we have to take cases out that are more or less theoretically, because that's the only thing we can deal with. If it is a mixture, it's always more difficult. You know, if you say he was there, but he didn't really take any data, he didn't delete it, he just changed the name and not the data itself. And you know, if these are the cases how they happen in the real world, but it would be much more difficult to discuss them with you. So I just picked out really cases that are easy to handle. But there is another question here. I was asked to give you at least 5 minutes time to go to the next lecture. So I simply say we just continue our discussion. So if anybody for you is on the rush to the next conference, please feel free just to leave. Yes, please.
All these cases you presented were pretty much black and white. You either have access or not. What will happen if I have limited access to a website, like I'm a customer and I'm allowed to view my data, and I'm looking for some data that is supposed to be there, but it's not there, so I'm looking around, there's page 1 and 4, maybe there's 2 and 3 also, and that way I found data I'm not supposed to find, or they claim I'm looking to hack the system to manipulate something which I'm not, or I'm only trying to find something. Is any legislation about a scenario like that?
Well, I would say you're in trouble then, but there was a case, a very similar case. There was a computer company that was running a server system, and it was protected by a wonderful big door. And they said, okay, we protect the door, but there was somebody came in the room to clean, and he was allowed to clean the room, and he simply accessed the computer system. So the question was this a violation of Section 202A, because he had the limited right to get into the room, and this was the only protection for the computer system. So therefore, it is a good question. In general, it is not protected if you have access, and it can only be prosecuted, or cannot be prosecuted, but you could be sued by your boss if you're getting into the data. I think there is a next lecture going on in about 2 minutes, so we have to stop it here because my colleague will blame me if I'm not going to stop right now. So I would like to thank you very much for your attention. There will be an additional lecture on the legal issues at 6 o'clock about data retention, not data retention, the question what comes next after data retention, because they're already planning the next steps. Thank you very much for your attention.